and welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. My name is Della Shea, and I am the country CDO Ambassador for Canada and also a member of the Global Editorial Board for the CDO Magazine. And today I have the pleasure of talking with Gary Schneider, who is the Enterprise Data Governance Lead at MassMutual. So thank you, Gary, for joining me today. So Gary, I had an opportunity to spend some time kind of getting to know you a little bit and your background. You have a lot of experience. So hopefully my questions today will resonate with some of the challenges that CDOs are facing, especially when it comes to, trying to not just come up with a strategy or roadmap, but how do you actually implement it and make it real within your organization? And so I know you have a lot of experience in this industry. And what I found really interesting in getting to know you a little bit was also the background in product and marketing management. And so that really brings a great dynamic to the role of data. So I'm just interested to understand from your perspective, how has the role of data governance evolved since the kind of the early days of your career when you started to work with data?
Yeah, and I tell you, I'm starting to feel old, but yeah, I've got about 30 years in this space. And I often say that I was doing data governance before they called it data governance, but it's indeed evolved considerably over the years. Sort of what had its genesis, primarily in the formalization of a broader, more disciplined approach to data quality management and monitoring, has effectively morphed in a big way into an enterprise disrupting discipline that I consider something that's more akin to sort of an information risk management practice, really quite different. As well as a changing relationship in companies and the people they serve, that's really informing how the practice has evolved. Specifically, I can remember specifically going as far back as the Enron scandal in 2001 to the financial crisis in 2008, and more recent developments around privacy and the ethical use of data. It's really made a material impact in how we view the practice of data governance. Some of these more external influences, combined with companies' need to function more efficiently and confidently gain new and better insights from large volumes of data, has coalesced to sort of grow and evolve what we now call data governance. We can now also more fully understand our data and our stakeholders, and understand the data that's available to them and leverage it at scale to a point that we really couldn't historically. This improves business insights and just allows us to operate more effectively. And that sort of democratization, which is sort of a catchphrase we hear a lot about right now, that democratization of data is really all part of the ever evolving data governance ecosystem that's driving what we do.
It's really interesting. And what resonated with me when you were talking about the evolution was data quality. And you often hear data governance, terms synonymously with data quality, but it really is much more than that, and how it's evolved into other areas. I do like the way that you kind of framed it in terms of the information risk management, but also from the business perspective, it's how do you actually enable the desires and the strategic objectives of the business. So I think right now it's a little bit difficult to pin down, don't you? Like exactly what it is.
It really is. I think in many respects, what is data governance is different based on sort of the culture and the needs and the challenges that individual businesses face. But I do think more broadly, making a general statement, I think businesses are acknowledging that that data as an asset is not just a cliche anymore. Data as an asset is truly something that can be exploited and utilized by businesses far more deliberately than it has in the past for business gain and to drive business strategy.
Yeah. And with it becoming so broad and it's touching everything, it really requires being able to interact and interface and collaborate with a whole host of stakeholders within your organization to really understand, what are the key risks that are, and also not just risks, but objectives. So what do you think are the key risks facing data organizations right now?
Yeah, generally speaking, the risks today in many ways have remained constant, but the impact of those risks has, I think, increased significantly. So, generally speaking, I say the key data risks that most organizations face still relate to things like data loss and protection, and of course, poor data quality. That, in some way, shape, or form, I'd say that most risks that businesses face related to data fall within those buckets. But like I said before, the potential for harm due to those, to the loss of data from targeted breaches or inadvertent data disclosures, social engineering, or even internal actors, which is an increasing trend now, it's ever present and particularly magnified today. To compound the issue, many organizations have inadequate control environments in order to effectively manage related risks, such as internal data proliferation and sharing, huge right now. Improper data access, use, and data minimization, which is more specific to the privacy space, but is relevant, I think, holistically across organizations. These all have material, operational, and regulatory risk components, and important that I think have to be managed closely and tightly with a rigorous risk management and oversight program. Poor data quality is perhaps obvious, but the consequences of poor data quality, similar theme to the prior item, the consequences of poor data quality are particularly pronounced, given the significant increase in the use of big data and data science to inform business strategy.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And when you say that the likelihood is also of those risks actually coming to fruition, also increasing?
With technology, which is an opportunity to exploit data as a business in an ethical manner, the technology also creates opportunities for nefarious actors to exploit data and extract data, and on a much more frequent and impactful level. So for sure, the level of frequency is indeed increasing, and it's requiring that businesses have a much more rigorous risk management and oversight capability than, again, they have had historically.
Right. And you mentioned control environments and pretty much the breadth of the various risks that organizations are facing. So that creates a very complicated and complex environment to manage. Would you mind sharing a little bit about your experience in managing the complexities of risks, especially from a more of a global perspective, especially privacy? When you think about all the global privacy laws, and it becomes a complicated ecosystem.
Yeah, indeed. The ability to effectively manage risk, as I've said, requires a very focused and deliberate effort, which means that you need to have the right set of targeted people with the right tools in place on an enterprise scale that's nimble and capable of adjusting to some of the regulatory changes, or even some of the technology changes that seems we're faced with almost every day. It's quite common and largely understood that sort of this effective, timely identification, assessment, and treatment of data risk, including privacy, is made materially more complex by new or changing inconsistent sort of intra and inter national regulations, and then often complex legacy infrastructure, as well as multiple and disparate business processes. We find ourselves faced with changing regulatory demands, changing oftentimes disruptive technologies that require us to rethink our infrastructure, that require us to rethink about the existing risk management processes that we have in place. It really requires, I think, a rigorous change management process and a culture that is open and can willingly adapt to some of these changes a bit more nimbly, again, than we have in the past. Sort of this, just to compound things, the regular electronic cross-border exchange of information required by global organizations necessitates a verifiable increase in rigor and adequate safeguards to ensure that certain data is secure and protected in a manner that meets specific standards and principles, such as those laid out within GDPR, whether for privacy or other data risks. A strong enterprise data risk function, as I've said a couple of times already, with a network of professionals on the ground within each business function, enabled by a common GRC tool, a common risk management tool that really contains the full risk management ecosystem from risk identification to policies and controls, is typically necessary in this environment to be nimble and to be aware and to be nimble and to properly treat or address risks that have been identified. I will go on to say, though, that, and this perhaps sounds cliche, but it's true now as it's ever been, sound data governance and risk management is the responsibility of all employees, you know, who handle data. Building a data risk aware accountable culture is really paramount to successfully managing risk in any organization, irrespective of sort of the constructs and processes that you have in place. It really is a top to bottom cultural issue that needs to be addressed through both you know, harder and softer means.
Thank you, Gary. This has been an excellent discussion today. You certainly have so much knowledge and experience to share with this community. So I'm very thankful to have had this opportunity to chat with you today.
Thank you so much. It's truly been my honor and pleasure. Thank you very much.
And for other interviews, if anyone would like to see other content, please visit cdomagazine.tech.